being honest about it and talking about it validates you.
Yeah.
Instead of hiding away, you need to get out and talk about it. And again, sorry to say this, but I've read research evidence recently that again shows talking honestly about it and in a sense educating other people without necessarily doing it actively, but just by being there, that is hugely beneficial for your sense of identity. And that then rotates and keeps you going. Instead of a spiral downwards, you have a spiral upwards.
I always think if I get it out there, it's maybe helping somebody else. I mean, I always talk about my dementia to my carers, and it helps them. I know they get trained by these things, but different things happen with people with dementia, and it gives them more opportunity to learn about from the horse's mouth, if you know what I mean. Yeah, it helps them, and if I can help somebody else to do it like that, then I'll do that. You know, a lot of people say, "Well, don't want to talk about it, don't want to talk," but you have to. You have to. You know, it's not going to go away, is it? It's not going to. I mean, although it's hidden, yes, you can't see it, but it's hidden, and I will not hide it away from it. I always tell any you know, whatever. If a conversation comes up, I'll tell them. You know, it's you've got it, so people have to know about it, don't they?
Yeah.
It took me about 6 months to realise to accept it, and they give me a diagnosis of vascular, and it took me about 6 months to get used to the idea. And I was thinking, well, should I tell my daughter? Should I not tell my daughter? Yeah, I will tell my daughter. Anything that happens to me, I always tell people.
Living in the day is an important message to share as well. To, you know, not plan too far ahead, but maybe to have something in the near future that you're going to look forward to, and then do your best to make sure it happens.
Yeah.
So it can be tomorrow, it can be the day after, but I wouldn't go much further than that because I haven't got a clue what I'm doing beyond that. But there'll be something in the next 2 or 3 days that I'll have to look forward to. That is important, but I'll know today is important, the most important day. And then also, I think it's important that people who are newly diagnosed see the likes of Jim, Stephen, George, myself, and the many other people who have been diagnosed quite some time ago now. Because when I was first diagnosed, I asked the specialist how long had I got before I would conform to the stereotypical image of someone with dementia in the late stages.
Yeah.
There are a few swear words in there as well. But, you know, her response was based on the scans and assessments, 3 to 5 years. Now, that was 11 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and it's so easy to be written off by these people who are trying their best to give you honest advice, but it doesn't help. And what does help is the likes of Jim, Stephen, George, myself, and other people saying that, you know, you can live as well as possible for as long as possible, provided that you do what works for you, and not to change who you are simply because you've got that diagnosis of dementia.
When I was diagnosed, it's over 7 years ago, I was diagnosed. Like Stephen, it took me, well, longer than Stephen, actually. It took me well over 12 months to actually come to terms that I'd been given a terminal illness and there is no cure for it. Unlike other terminal illnesses where there is partial cures, dementia, there is no cure for it as of yet. And this is the only thing that I knew about dementia. I'd only ever met one person with dementia before. So once they told me I've got dementia, my first thing is, I'm dying. And you don't want to die, do you? So this is the thing. But as time goes on, I come to terms with this. I learned it. I got involved with people from the Alzheimer's Society. They brought me through a lot of my down. At one stage, I felt it was in a big hole. They helped me climb out of it. Up till 12 months ago, I lived in North Wales, and I've done hundreds and hundreds of different talks all over North Wales to people with dementia, trying to get over the point that although you have dementia, there's still a life to live with dementia. The old saying that a lot of people don't like is you can live well with dementia. I feel I live as well as I can with dementia. I still do as much as I can for myself. But this is the idea, is to get things out to people, let people know that there is a life with dementia. The problem is when you see things on the television or you read about things, it's always about people that's near the end of life with dementia. And this is automatically then what people think when they're told they've got dementia. That's going to be in a matter of no time at all. So the more people we can get like us four to be going out there and talking about dementia properly, putting the word out, the dementia, it is a killer, but it won't kill you quickly, the better we will be, I feel.
I mean, I talk to people a lot about it, but I'm really annoyed with myself for not talking to my GPs. Well, I say GPs because, you never know who you can see. If anyone, folks, I feel I feel frightened to do so because, the power balance and all that sort of stuff. And I think, I can't take his time up telling him about this and that, and they won't listen otherwise. But I mean, I've only once actually managed to get a meeting with a GP here, and it didn't go particularly well. What am I saying there? It's not always easy to talk to people from a position of weakness.
And what dementia does is it disempowers you, and it frustrates you more than anything, I think, or in my case it does, and it means that you feel a lack of control or a lack of ability to influence things more than control things. And I suppose when you encounter people who are perceived to be or actually in a position of authority and who exercise that authority, then you can feel less of a person than you would otherwise feel, I think. And so that's the problem, really. And I think there needs to be some kind of way of addressing that without making the person in authority feel belittled as well. So there needs to be some kind of common ground where you can have a useful discussion about what dementia is like for a person living with it, with people who perhaps need to know but think they know.
Telling your story is really important. It's your narrative, your story, that will make people listen and change their minds. And it's very interesting that the professionals, like, for example, Admiral nurses, who I do quite a lot of work with, I was doing some interviews just last week, and I think every person involved in the interviews, whether on my side of the fence or on their side of the fence, had personal family experience of dementia. In other words, they had a story, they had been through a story, and it had affected them so much. Now, if we can actually do that, we can feel our own identity is reinforced, but also we can feel we're doing something worthwhile because we are persuading people.
And talking about dementia with professionals, which is what we're talking about at the moment in this level of conversation, is one level, but the other level is also talking with family and talking with friends about dementia. And that is often a very different experience for us. And it will be for people who are newly diagnosed. And each person with dementia is different, of course, and unique, but also each family member is different and unique. And the way that they will handle this and experience and support this is going to be very different. It's often difficult to express oneself honestly in those situations, in those relationships. And I know that works two ways. So it's important that we have these other outlets where we can express ourselves, be it through peer support or be it through professional support, but also not to lose sight of the need to talk about it within our own family setup as well, in a way that works for both parties.
So much, when you're given a diagnosis, how do you react afterwards? Well, a huge amount of how you approach that resides in your family and friends. We've all heard stories, I'm sure, about people with a diagnosis whose husbands or wives are ashamed of them or frightened, don't want them to go out. I mean, it's awful, but it happens. And let's face it, the sort of 20 or 25 people who we regularly interact with through Zoom and would have been at conferences and meetings and things, we are a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of all the people with dementia out there. And I could, 99 point something percent of people don't get out and talk about it.
Yeah.
And a lot of those will just get on with their lives, but maybe not in a way that is as positive as it could be. So, I think it's not talking about being honest about your dementia is not just about you being honest. It's about not being negated by your spouse or your friends. And we all know also that we lose friends. People don't know how to cope with it,
Yeah.
or they just don't want to cope with it. And we've made a lot more friends through dear old Innovations Deep and Zoom.
What we have to remember, or not just us, but people with dementia in general, is when you are fully diagnosed, when you get your first ever diagnosed, when they first say to you, sorry, Mr. Ibel, you have dementia. Bang, it's like somebody hit you with a hammer. And you draw inwardly. As Stephen was saying, as I know through my experiences, you don't want to talk about it. So what we need to find is a way of being able to talk to these people that are newly diagnosed, because that is when you really need the first bit of help, is when you're newly diagnosed, not 12 months, 18 months, 2 years after, when you already know about dementia. You need to know about dementia at the earliest stage you feel prepared to talk about it.
A number of us have actually offered to do that very sort of talking to people newly diagnosed, and memory clinics just do not take it up.
Well, after I got diagnosed the first time, I didn't really know where to go, what to do, because I was such an active person, being out on the land, farming and whatnot all the time. It stumped me to know what to do. I just didn't know where to go, what to do. I found a way of, hopefully, maybe people who's listening to what I'm saying, I do YouTube videos, trying to get it out to explain to what I go through every day. Whether it be you're not feeling well or feeling well, whatever, 10 more, I'll be up 200 videos, so I've done very well, I think, really. That's what it needs, isn't it? So to get the message out there, and like I say, early onset dementia is frightening to anybody, isn't it? It's frightening to anybody.
Going back to what I said earlier about what do you say to someone who's just been diagnosed? Well, Jim's absolutely right. And if only we could get it everywhere, talk to someone who already has a diagnosis and has been living with it for a while. Obviously, find someone who's positive about it. But you see, the trouble is, when you do get a diagnosis, you're almost always told, time to plan for effectively for your death, and don't take risks. And we all go along and say, no, you can handle risks.